Okay, we'll call to order the January 20th, 2016 meeting of the Franklin County Commission. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Renaud,
Present.
Commissioner Waymire,
Present.
Chair Howard,
Present.
Commissioner Harris,
Present.
Commissioner Dunn.
Here. Okay, if you have an electronic device, if you'll put it on silent and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And please remain standing for the invocation that will be led by Pastor Scott Dickinson.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Bill, last time I was here, I shared some words of wisdom, and I like to think of wisdom for Commissioner Steve Harris. That the Bible talks about gray hair being a sign of real wisdom. So,
I don't know about that.
So you got it. In my 35 years plus of ministry, this has been true for me, and I think it's true for us as a county and as a city as well. And the quote is this: "Wisdom is holding on to the old just as long as it's good, and grabbing the new as soon as it's better." And I think as you make your decisions and our city makes decisions, those are the kind of things we're looking for and that you're tasked with. So let's pray. Lord, thank you for helping us to gain wisdom through the things that we learn, through experience and through trial and error sometimes. And I thank you for these who have been chosen to lead our county. And Lord, I pray that we would, as a county, use that kind of wisdom. When the old is old, let it go. When the new is great, the best, let's bring it on in. And as citizens, help us to remember to pray for these guys and for our county employees and for the work that they do. Lord, may their decisions be wise, and may their lives reflect what they do here in this chamber. And Lord, we just ask you to watch over us, watch over the folks of our county and our city today as they drive down these crazy, kind of icy streets at times. Just watch over them, keep them safe. And Lord, just give us a great day and a great week. We ask in your name. Amen.
Thank you, Scott. Yeah, it takes us to correspondence and organizational business.
Just a couple things, Commissioners. Just a reminder that we do have the joint lunch with the school district and the city this afternoon. That is at USD 290 Central Office. The Conservation District lunch is tomorrow in Celebration Hall at the fairgrounds. I have we got notified that next Wednesday, the 27th, is Local Government Day, sponsored by KAC. Give you the schedule for that. It is free. I plan on going up. There's different meetings, and you'll see on the agenda that there's different things that are of interest to us. If anybody would like to go with us on that, just give me a holler. There's some different changes there that we need to be there and make our voices heard, so we'll be doing that. So the last thing I would say is that I got a couple phone calls and a couple of emails from a few of the commissioners about the road conditions. There was some concern sent to one of our commissioners about roads at approximately about 4:45, 5 o'clock yesterday. Our staff, our road staff, get out and get moving on it about noon yesterday, pre-treating, and they worked until about 9 o'clock last night, putting salt and sand down and that sort of thing. So they can't be at all areas at one time, and so but they were working on it. And then as the weather kind of continued overnight a little bit, they even worked overnight. A second shift came in and worked overnight from about 9 o'clock to 5 o'clock this morning, and making sure that the roads were ready to go and treated. So just wanted to let you know that they were out last night.
I think they did as good a job as the state and the federal folks. I drove back from. I was driving back from Topeka from the Department of Revenue yesterday, at about 2 o'clock, and it instead of taking an hour to get home, took about 2.5 because the traffic was going really slowly because of the weather conditions. They couldn't keep up with it with that fine mist and the temperature at 20 or 21 degrees. It was freezing just as it hit. So I applaud our folks for the job that they did in all the county roads.
Okay.
That's all I got.
Anyone sign up public comment?
Don Stottlemyre.
A citizen desiring to speak on an item not on the agenda may do so at this time. Discussion is limited to 5 minutes, and the commission will not take action or discuss items at this time. Discussion should be limited to matters of county commission business, and public comment is not permitted in regard to personnel matters or on pending legal matters. Items introduced under public comment may become agenda items at a later date. Don?
Morning, Commissioners. Thank you for allowing me to speak to you this morning. I apologize for not being here on the 11th. That's when you did your reorganization deal. I could have been here to explain a few things, but I was asked by the Solid Waste Authority to attend a meeting at Mound City on that day, so I was down there trying to help them out down there on the Solid Waste Authority issue. Just to give you a little past history on the Solid Waste Authority. 2001, I was originally appointed to the Solid Waste Authority Board by the Franklin County Commissioners, and I served on there for 15 years. In 2003, there was a change made when we added Wellsville Chamber of Commerce to our structure as far as having a representative attend their meetings. So their meeting, the Solid Waste Authority meeting and the Wellsville meetings were on the same day. So at that time, I was willing to do the alternate position, but not do the full-time voting position, which Harold Fuller, now, if whether you know it or not, is your voting member. Whoever you select is just an alternate. Will only serve and have a vote when either John or Harold Fuller is not present at the meeting. And Harold's been on there probably at least 10 years. And right now, and I know another question come up also, at this time, there's not any county commissioners that sat on the board, other than there were 2 alternates, myself and a gentleman from Osage City with the alternate, and the only meetings he ever attended was when it was in Osage City. And they do switch around. They have changed it now, so it's every other month instead of every month. So that did afford me the ability to go, when I was chamber, to go 1 month to chamber and 1 month to the Solid Waste Authority, which I was just alternate anyhow. And I never knew until I got there whether I had a vote or not, because Harold, you never heard from Harold whether he was going to be there or not. So John, you always knew, and Rick Son, you always knew. And if you know, as far as, and then the other subject was grants. The Solid Waste Authority hasn't administered a grant in over 5 years. When the state grants dried up from KDHE, the grants dried up that the Solid Waste Authority was getting. So when Donna stepped down as their director about 3 or 4 years ago, Charlene Weiss come on, and the first thing the board did was cut hours and cut the budget that the counties were paying to the Solid Waste Authority, because they didn't think it was fair now that that position wasn't providing grant support. And that does not mean she's not still looking. They're just not out there anymore. The state don't even have enough money to take care of their own back door, let alone pass it to our back door anymore. So if you got any questions, I know this is not a question deal. I'll gladly go sit down. But if you do have any questions on it, then, you can't expect, you got nobody up here who's ever served on that board. And I was on there 15 years, so I could probably answer your question about as good as anybody. So, and if you don't have any questions, I just felt that you should kind of know how it works and where it's going and how it's been. Thank you.
Thanks, Don, for coming in and explaining it to us. That's all. Okay, it takes us to the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are the reorganization meeting from January the 11th, and also the minutes from the January the 13th meeting, and consider and approve claim vouchers and tax change orders in the amount of a positive $122.14. I have a motion to approve the.
You have claim vouchers also of 1 million. They're laying right.
See. Claim voucher in the amount of 1 million. Read it. Is it 24?
432.07.
1,024,432.07. Have approved.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Approved and seconded.
Commissioner Waymire,
Yes.
Commissioner Renaud,
Yes.
Commissioner Harris,
Yes.
Commissioner Dunn,
Yes.
Chair Howard.
Yes. Okay, it takes us to item of business. The first item of business is consider the purchase of a differential pressure switch.
Morning, Commission. What we have is we had an incident where we lost power down on the city block downtown there New Year's Eve. Both control pumps for our heat and air system there shut down. Nothing restarted back up after power was reinitiated. We had a unit that froze. It is in the process of being replaced, but the factory recommended that we do differential pressure switches on each unit, which will, when the power failure goes, will eliminate the water that is in the unit as much as possible so they don't freeze. That's the factory's recommendation. We also have already taken other steps programming wise and stuff that I will get a notification, things like that, by email and stuff when those pumps both fail and don't restart. That way I can make sure that I go in and manually restart them. We get alarms on them so we know that that's going on without having to just guess and go in and make that guess. So this was the cost of the differential pressure switches for all the units that are there. So I think it's a good step to take. We were fortunate that we only had one unit that had to be replaced. We had several others that were real close to that.
What's the cost of replacing the unit?
And I was going to touch on that. It is about close to $9,000. That is above my spending limit.
Yeah,
However,
that's-
since it was an emergency repair, we went ahead with it.
You would have thought within the tech specs of the installation of that a pressure differential switches would
It's
have
there
been
and it's optional.
an option that we
Right.
should have.
Should have taken, didn't know that at the time. So, and it's really the first time, and now we'll hopefully be able to prevent that altogether, that we've had that issue where they both control pumps go down and they don't do anything afterwards. So
What actually broke when it?
the coils froze. I mean, they're small, diameter, 3/4 inch, 1/2 inch, where the water flows to the units. Then the compressor and everything, it went wet when the water froze and got through. Then everything went wet, so it basically went through the whole system, got water in the oil and the compressor and everything like that. So basically toasted the whole unit, except for control parts and everything like that.
Are we certain that none of the other units had any?
Had them all checked, and according to the technicians, and I've had their bosses even came down to verify the ones that were giving us issues, that they checked and said there was nothing else there at this time. So
Well, and of course, I'm not a technical expert, but when you've got a closed system like that, is there a way to, like with a radiator, to put pressure on it to visually
yeah,
inspect and also look at the?
That's what they did to the units that were giving us all the clues that they could be like this other one that did freeze, and that's what they did to them.
So the system doesn't have, it's just water, not antifreeze or glycol?
No.
Is there a chance to to switch over to,
We could look into it and see.
that accomplish the same thing, wouldn't it?
That would do very similar, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be fail-safe too,
So,
other than the capacity of that system is probably hundreds of gallons.
yeah, and that's the thing. That's what they said. You've got take an incredible amount of glycol.
Yeah.
And you probably run into expenses much, But I'll look into that if that's recommendation too.
Well, I think Commissioner Waymire is absolutely right. That's the direction I was going down to, is some sort of antifreeze in the system, at least to take a look at it and that gives us an option depending on what the cost of it is.
Mm-hmm.
Because just because you put in a pressure differential switch doesn't mean that the switch is, anything mechanical can fail.
Over time, yep.
And $9,000 of how many units?
30.
Yeah, $9,000 a whack.
No, that's total. That's total. This quote here is for all the units total.
Okay.
All the pressure switches, installation, anything that needs to be done. That's the 9,257. I think
Okay.
is what it was.
All right.
That's for all the units, installation and everything.
More questions? Make a motion to approve the purchase of the pressure switch project.
I'll make a motion to approve the purchase of the pressure switches.
Got a motion, is there a second?
Our option is if we don't.
Well, I can look at the glycol, and I'll do that anyway and get a cost on glycol. I mean, if you don't do it, you have the possibility of it happening again. Unit shut down, pump shut down. Say technology fails and doesn't notify me that I'm out of town 3 or 4 hours away, doesn't notify me that the units have shut down and aren't restarting. You have the possibility of, this was the unit that was replaced with one of the smaller units. So if you look at the bigger units, you probably look at $15,000 a unit to replace it.
What are the other advantages, or are there any other advantages by putting in the switches than just the freezing part?
It shuts down. That's the basic advantage of it. It isolates the water in the system as much as it can. That's the purpose of them, to shut the loop down and isolate the water. And like Colt said, glycol is definitely an avenue to look into, and I will look into
Do we
that.
want to, it saves the pumps. It gets the water out of the pumps, so the pumps could potentially be damaged, but it's still in the pipes. You could lose fittings. You could lose a fitting inside a wall. It could break open. But if the whole system is protected by like a glycol which again may be so expensive we don't want, but.
Well, and also the volume of water in the other line, you've got 4-inch, 6-inch line versus a half-inch line inside the system. So,
Yeah.
When I did come in and discover it, the building was probably sitting at about 50 degrees. The attic was probably 38 or 40.
Yeah.
That's where the units that give us the most problem were.
So do we want to table it and so you can get maybe an idea on that other cost? It may be so expensive that we.
I can do it either way.
What's the turnaround time to find that out?
I imagine
2 weeks, 1 week?
I imagine within a week I could know the glycol. Probably a couple days once, they'll have to figure
Our
out
bid
what
is good for 30 days, it said. I didn't look at the date on it, but
It's January the 12th is the date from McElroy's, and I'm along that same line of thinking. We don't want another issue, but if the turnaround time is within a week, and we can get the cost analysis on that to make a comparison, I would be in favor of tabling this to wait to look and see which direction we need to go.
That's the consensus then? Okay, we had a motion on.
Well, yeah,
We
exactly.
have a motion on the floor. It's died for the lack of a second. So table it and come back with some more options for us.
Okay, thank you.
We have a motion to table that.
It died for lack of a second.
Back for a second.
All right, but are you gonna?
Yes, so
I'll make a
moved.
motion to table.
Yeah.
I'll second it.
Commissioner Renaud?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Commissioner Waymire?
Yes.
Chair Howard?
Yes. Okay. Next item, this will go to Jim's. Let's skip over. Will be the consider the purchase of a Ford F-350 cab and chassis from Shawnee Mission Ford for the state bid price of $35,293.
Commissioners, there should be a second item for a contract from the.
Oh, when Jim walked up, we just go to this and go back.
Oh, okay.
We won't leave the sheriff out.
We got you. Go ahead.
Truck 11, a 2008 Ford F-350 4x4 with a V10 motor, 109,805 miles. Needs a new motor. We took it down to Beckman, and that was their diagnosis. The installed price is $7,700 on a $10,000 truck. At that point, we started looking at replacing the truck and got the state bid price from Shawnee Mission Ford in the amount of $35,293. The request is a motion declaring truck number 11 surplus. We'll take the dump bed off of it, put it on this new truck, and approving the purchase of a F-350 cab and chassis from Shawnee Mission Ford for the state bid price.
Was the engine in that truck a diesel engine also that went bad?
No, it was V10 gas.
Okay.
So the state has a bid price for a cab and chassis?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So obviously the Ford's going to allow us to transfer the equipment from that other truck to this one.
Yes, sir.
Make a motion to approve purchasing the F-350 cab and chassis from Shawnee Mission Ford for the state bid price.
Do you have a motion? Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Motion second.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Commissioner Waymire?
Yes.
Commissioner Renaud?
Yes.
Chair Howard?
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Okay, now we'll go back to the consider approving a contract for the Franklin County Sheriff's Office to provide law enforcement service for the city of Pomona. Sheriff?
Good morning. This contract is actually a contract between the Board of County Commissioners and the City of Pomona City Council. From looking at the statutes, there have been some changes. That's not the way that it's traditionally been done. It's been completed by the sheriff with the council, but there has been some changes. I've consulted with the counselor. The actual statute says that it's a contract between the Board of Commissioners and that city governing body, and then whatever agreement is made, it is subject to the approval of the sheriff, and then once it's signed off by the sheriff, then it becomes effective. If it's not approved by the sheriff, then it's voided after 30 days. The statute also goes on to say that the funds that are received from that are to be used solely for law enforcement purposes. Those funds currently are going into the general fund instead of going into like a sheriff reimbursement line, which I think would probably be more in line with what the statute details. So, anyway, if the counselor has anything on that.
The cost on this, is it similar to last year's to go up in here, or did it?
It's the same.
It's the same? Okay.
Yes, and that the way that we get the cost is we just figure out what it cost us for one, for the average of a deputy, and we also throw in corporals and sergeants because they also use they also do some of the Pomona duty. The responsibilities that it draws out have not changed. We respond to any call for service 24/7, and then we provide a dedicated number of hours every week specific for patrol.
35 to 40.
35 to 40, and we do 40 to 45 typically is what we do every week on that.
So though, wouldn't the price that you calculate though have some play to the number of hours of patrolling? So if you're spending more hours,
It does, but they're still in the county, so
yeah.
We don't add staff for that. From looking at the history of this type of contract, the way that it was set up and the idea behind it, and for it being with the language of it that being used for solely for law enforcement purposes. The reason for that, from what I'm reading from some of the history on it, was so that agencies could add staff to accommodate things like that. Again, that's just kind of where we're at. What we're doing isn't really changing. Without the contract, deputies are not allowed to write tickets through Pomona Court. We cannot enforce any city ordinances. This contract meets all the legal requirements for us to enforce their local ordinances just like a regular police department would. Otherwise, we can enforce state statutes, but no city ordinances over within the city limits of Pomona.
You know how many years we've been doing this with Pomona? It's been several.
It's been a long time, yes.
We do this contract for any other cities?
No. Pomona's the only city that does this. And I believe it has to do with the size of the city. They have to provide some sort of law enforcement service. They either need to have their own agency or use the sheriff's office. City of Wellsville has their own police department. They would be the only other city that would fall into that besides the city of Ottawa.
So 4 equal installments, 14,209.25. That's 60,837, which previously went into the general fund, but now it goes will be, once the contract is signed, it goes directly to.
The contract does not specify where that money goes. I'm just telling you what the statute says.
And he's right. The contract or the money received for agreements such as this have to be used for law enforcement.
It would just be merely an administrative change. Just when the payment comes in, it would just be a matter of change from where we're putting it just straight into a deposit line item for the general fund into the sheriff's reimbursement line item. So it would just show up a little bit differently in the budget numbers when the reports are printed at the end of the month. It's merely an administrative change, but something we want direction on you guys.
So it's administratively, it's not really changing the budget by the sheriff's budget by $60,837. It's just a matter of processing it through the system so it meets the statute.
Well, we did not count on getting $60,000 in sheriff reimbursements, so that would be a fairly significant change in my budget.
Mm-hmm.
My question is that regardless, even if it's because just like any grants or anything else that comes in, as long as the amount that is expended over into for a particular department, it doesn't have to go, as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't have to go into a reimbursement line. It can just go into the general.
But what Sheriff Richards is saying is statutorily, this says that any contracts for law enforcement need to show in the sheriff's budget. And right now, that money is not showing in the sheriff's budget. That money is showing as a general fund revenue. And it's not technically a general fund revenue, it's a law enforcement service being provided, and so it should be reflected in his budget. And the way to make that happen is to show it as a reimbursement to the sheriff's budget.
Or to split out the costs. I mean, you have if $60,000 worth of labor is going towards, I mean, you show it in the budget. You don't have to show it coming back in necessarily. You can show that when it's budgeted that some of the use goes for regular and some of the use goes for Pomona. If it's funded from the general fund, the reimbursement can still come to the general fund. If his costs are distributed from that general fund, then
right.
The sheriff's fund is in the general fund, so it is still going into the general fund. It's not changing what fund it's going into. It's just showing up as a reimbursement into the sheriff's line item to show that that money was received for the purpose of law enforcement services in the sheriff's budget.
Right.
Just to meet the legal.
It's just a statute.
the important thing is we don't have more money than we thought we did. It's
No, we
just
do
how
not.
we're going to show it
No,
on
we do
paper.
not.
So you don't have $60,000 more dollars to spend.
Yeah, exactly.
Provided that it was budgeted that we were going to receive, and I don't know if it was or was not, if that was figured in as part of our revenues in this budget or not, because we did not have a contract.
Well, it's something we've
For this
always
year.
been able to provide
don't
with
know.
the current level of
I'm
funding.
not part of that discussion.
Anybody else have any questions on this? Not look for a motion to approve the contract with the city of Pomona for the sheriff department to provide law enforcement services.
Make a motion to approve this contract.
Have a motion, to have a second.
Second.
Have a motion, and a second.
Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Commissioner Waymire?
Yes.
Commissioner Renaud?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Chair Howard?
Yes. Okay, that takes us to staff reports. John?
I don't have anything at this time.
Okay. Derek?
Neither do I.
Sheriff?
I had mentioned a couple weeks ago that we were working on getting an active shooter training set up for the public. We are going to be having that on the 30th of this month. It's a Saturday. It's going to be hosted at the Ottawa Middle School. We're going to have 2 sessions. The first one is from 8 a.m. to noon. The second one is from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. We have teamed up with the gun guys to provide this, to provide the training. I know that we're limiting our numbers to 40 per session, and both sessions are almost filled up already. So I've also talked with Nick Robbins. He will have a crew standing by to make sure that if anybody has any injuries or any medical conditions, that he'll be there for that to provide that. So that's where we are on that. We've completed the testing process on our deputy hiring process. We had some very good candidates, probably the best pool of candidates that we've had since I've been here, and we're going to be proceeding on with oral boards and interviews and all that. So other than that, we've been very busy the last couple of days working crashes and slide offs, and we're looking forward to getting more all-wheel drive vehicles, because ours are that we're driving now are most of them are a little tough to get around with themselves. So but we're making do right now.
How many made it to the oral board part of the testing?
Right now there's a committee that's looking at the applications packets and the test results, and they will be choosing a number, the top so many, that will proceed on to the oral board, and we're probably looking at about half a dozen, maybe 8, that would make it on to that point. There were 51 that had applied. We ended up with 20-something that tested. So we only had one person that didn't successfully complete the test, but we had some pretty good applicants this time, several that were already certified.
And just filling one spot?
Yes.
Jim?
Mr. Holmes already described the activities of the department yesterday and last night. We anticipate that it may occur again tonight and tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay, takes us to commissioner comments and board reports.
I'd like to talk a little bit more about Solid Waste Authority and how we proceed from there, since Don's here today. We talked about having a commissioner on that board or not having one. I don't know, Derek, you might have looked into this, or John, have thoughts about this. Should we have Harold Fuller still be our representative and Don alternate, I guess?
Commissioner Renaud was actually the commissioner that was assigned to that board.
And as I recall, though, didn't we say something to the effect, I don't know if it's these exact words, but tentative based upon further discussion or something like that? Because at the time we didn't have clarity exactly. I was under the understanding that there wasn't a commissioner assigned from each county, and that we were going to actually, I think it may have been Derek or John, I don't know, we were going to explore that further to make a determination. But that Randall was penciled in on it tentatively. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, he was.
Do we need to do anything further on this?
Well, I I don't think you necessarily have to. And talking with Don, I understand it a little bit better, and it doesn't sound like that whoever the representative from our board is will be a regular voting member. I personally have no problem with Don continuing to serve in that role. I think that's what you want.
I just want them to be clear before, let them know all of everything before they make it,
Sure.
I'm sorry I wasn't here for that date, I had to be out of town. So you really didn't know a lot of those things. So I'd be willing to do it if it's still open, but I don't want to take it from anybody if you have somebody that wants to do it.
Well, I don't recall Randall's exact words, but it was something to the effect that he would be willing to do it based upon our further investigation and review of it.
So we would be removing the voting member, which is Harold Fuller.
Well, I don't think we're doing anything with Harold Fuller. My understanding is just Harold was staying.
Okay.
Randy was going to be the board's
Alternate or representative. is
quote
the-
unquote
yeah.
representative.
If we've got a commissioner who's willing to do it, I don't know why we would change that then.
If I could speak, it's just kind of like John, he just automatically, you're a voting member, you don't nominate him every year. He just automatic, well, it's been that way with Harold Fuller also. The only one you've ever voted on was the alternate.
Well, like you said, without Randy here, I don't know what his thoughts are, whether he wants to stay on this or whether he's would be okay with not staying on it and letting it stay as it is. I don't know without being able to ask him what we need to do.
We can reach out and have a conversation with them and give him a call this afternoon, or because I don't think he's going to be at the joint lunch.
He's not.
So I'll give him a holler this afternoon, later on this afternoon, and talk to him about it.
Do we need to let Don know his status then?
Yeah, I mean, I think that once we talk to Randy, John probably ought to reach out to Don as well and just let him know.
And then it would have to come back before the board again to make a formal
That would be
motion.
my recommendation, yeah.
You can't make a motion out based upon tentative, or you want to do it after the fact.
Right.
That it's not on the agenda for
10-4.
discussion and vote.
Don, you go to the meetings anyway, don't you? One way or the other?
Well, the Lake Region RC&D has one of their main projects, so I always attend the meetings, even if I don't have the right to vote, I'm always there, usually. And so then if Harold doesn't happen to show up, or John doesn't happen to show up, then I would vote then. But only unless one of them doesn't show up to the meeting.
So
go ahead
go ahead.
and you can talk to Randy this afternoon and see his thoughts, and he will get a hold of Don and tell him what it is, and if it needs to come back for a motion later on, we can do that at a later date. Anything else, Roy? Anything else?
Several of us went to the Chamber of Commerce annual meeting there Saturday night at Ottawa University, and most of us first experience have been at the Ottawa University new convention and conference center, and it's very nice, and had a nice meal, but lasted too long again.
And there wasn't even skits involved.
It lasted pretty long.
Went to the hospital meeting last night. They reviewed a lot of their annual procedures and policies that require annual review. That took up most of the meeting. They did vote to, I guess I'll go back to the hospital every year, puts together a list of goals, and they're true goals. They're not, I guess, a forecast of what's probably going to happen next year. They're pretty, they're goals. And reviewing last year's goals, they met 62 and I think 0.5% of them. So they voted to give a 62.5% of $250 to every full-time equivalent, non-administrative, I believe non-physician employee. So to reward them for meeting those, and so good things continue to happen at the hospital.
We did have an ECAN board meeting last evening, and there was a long agenda, but give you a snapshot is that we reviewed the work plans for Head Start, which, but since they receive funds, state and federal, there's a lot of oversight, if you will. Anyway, I have to review their action plans, review their state in-kind donation receipts. The other thing that the ECAN does each year, because they help people with assistance with rental, is that there is a fair market rental value review done each year on rental rates for houses and apartments, and then we have to review that and make a determination if there's going to be an increase or decrease in assistance, and approve that. Along those same lines, then a review is done also of the utility allowances based upon the counties in which the housing the ECAN has. Most of the counties went up very little, but Anderson County had great increases in every one of their utilities, every one of them. And then reviewed the strategic plan, didn't act on it. We're going to table that for further review when we go to retreat. And then also reviewed the wage study that's done each and every year, which also is a requirement for grants with Head Start. But it's interesting to look at those and the comparison in wages for people that are similarly situated, and where our folks stand there. Not that they get a wage increase, although some of them, there is a gap there. And then reviewed the letter from Lynn Jenkins on her support for the putting forward for this coming year for the block grant process and program from the federal government that finances ECAN and other institutions like that. And they were looking to have members from that board go to Washington, D.C. that week in March when that's bill's going to be put forward. And then that was it.
Okay, I have not attended any meetings or anything since the last meeting. Need to enter into executive session for a matter of attorney-client privilege for 45 minutes. That'll include the commission, the administrator, and council.
Can we have a 5-minute recess before that, or at least a 2-minute recess before we go? Please.
13:50. Want to go into executive session at
9:18?
50.
Okay, 9:15.
All right.
Make it happen.
9:08 to enter at 9:18. Then I'd make that motion for
Second.
stated.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're out of executive session at 10:03. No action taken, no decisions made. If there's nothing else, entertain a motion for adjournment.
You got it.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.